people. I'm going to introduce them one at a time. The first speaker is going to be John Horrigan. We're going to go from big, haunted Massachusetts, South Shore to Marshfield. John Horrigan, folklorist, weather researcher, historical fire researcher.
Agitator.
Many of you know him from the Brent Rock fire lecture that was here this summer. They were beating down the doors to get to. He had to give 80 rain checks. Anyway, we're glad to have you back, John. And then, secondly, we'll be having Dick Sullivan, retired Randolph history teacher, storyteller, and one who's very much in tune with the supernatural coincidences. He can really make you feel it, because he's felt it. And he will be talking about haunted South Shore, some of his family stories that are very powerful. And then last but not least, we have Derek Gunn, a Marshfield resident, grew up in Marshfield, and he's an archaeologist. He discovered the standing stones in Marshfield, and also a paranormalist, and synchronicity. Anyway, he has a lot of interesting tales to tell. He a wealth of knowledge, and very entertaining too. So they're each going to speak about a half hour each, and then we're going to have a little panel where you can ask them questions or tell a few stories of your own. So I'm going to introduce our first speaker now, John Horrigan.
One thing I'm thinking about is forward lights. Can we keep the forward lights on and off, or should we go completely dark?
Okay, I'll do this and this.
Oh, this or this?
Yeah.
Okay. Want to go with that? Does everybody feel comfortable with that? Or?
Everybody see that? Oh, yeah.
Okay. Why don't we go with this configuration?
Okay, all right.
I'm being a diva already. Look at that.
Can I give you a desk lamp?
No, thank you. No, thanks.
Water.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome on such a rainy night to Ventress Library. My name is John Horrigan. My portion of tonight's presentation will be Haunted Massachusetts, and that's a neat logo I use on my conference, the Mass Monster Mash, that my wife Jenny designed. And I'm using for the first time a remote. So if the TV channel changes across the way, I'm responsible. Background, as Chris mentioned, I'm an old New England folklorist. I run a couple of free groups on meetup.com. My expertise lies in historical weather, historical fires, and paranormal legends. I'm also a member of multiple historical societies, a reenactor with the Lincoln Minutemen, a professional sports announcer with the Boston Bruins Alumni and New England Patriots Alumni Club. So if I break out into announcer's voice, I can't help it. It's in me. And I organize in 2 weeks the New England History Festival. We call it Historipalooza. The past is a blast. It's coming in Watertown November 14th, historyfestival.org. And we just came off, thankfully, 2 shows, the Mass UFO Show and the Mass Monster Mash. As my wife said, when I married you, I didn't realize the 3 of your other personalities were waiting for you down in your car. Tonight's freak out: Bridgewater Triangle, sea serpents and sea monsters, Marshfield Sea Serpents, the Man Hill Beach Monster, UFOs and phantom air raids, ghosts of the old Bay State, Dover Demon, phantom clowns, Berkshire Bigfoot, phantom pumas, and dances with wolves. Yes, I have issues. The first thing I want to talk about, you might have seen a report last night on Fox News, a friend of mine, Andrew Lake, about the Bridgewater Triangle. Bridgewater Triangle is a purported anomalous area where paranormal activity and psychic phenomena happens on a regular basis or regular intervals, depending on who you speak to. Aside from strange things like cattle mutilation, Bigfoot, UFOs, Thunderbirds, giant snakes and reptiles, giant dogs, phantom pumas, ghosts, phantom fires, spook lights, Native American ghosts, and more are reported in the Bridgewater Triangle. And whenever you say Bridgewater Triangle, you must salute the Dean of Cryptozoology, Mr. Lauren Coleman. If you're interested in any of these subjects, trust me, Derek will back me on this one. It's Mysterious America. Make sure you have that in your knapsack. It's a seminal book of cryptozoology, and I liken it to the way Sergeant Pepper changed culture. This changed the research of paranormal phenomena. Also, you have to salute 2 guys, 2 good friends of mine, Godfather of the Hockomock Swamp, Chris Pittman, bridgewatertriangle.org, and then author Christopher Balzano over at masscrossroads.com. He's got some great books. Dark Woods is phenomenal. and Ghosts of the Bridgewater Triangle. So what is the Bridgewater Triangle? Well, it's a 200 square mile area in southeastern Massachusetts with its apex in Abington. It's, let me see if I can get this yeah, all right. Abington is the apex. Down here to the southeast corner of Freetown State Forest, and over to the southwest corner is Seekonk, Massachusetts. Central to this area is this area known as the Hockomock Swamp. Multiple nicknames from the Native Americans that have existed there: Wampanoags, Devil's Swamp, place where evil spirits dwell, it's been called. But that was the heart of fighting during King Philip's War, which took place in 1675 and 1676, where horrific atrocities were committed on both sides. Vivisections, beheadings, by not only the colonists, but the Native Americans that existed there as well. Of course, the colonists won. But people say that's central to all of the issues that happen within the Bridgewater Triangle, that it's just a cursed area. The first story out of the Bridgewater Triangle, and again, I'm condensing this, I only have 28 minutes and 30 seconds left. April 1970, I call it the Bridgewater Bumper Shaker. I went to college in Bridgewater, Mass, and insert creepy cry here. Went to Bridgewater State College, and around April of 1970, residents of Bridgewater, Mass were reporting hearing something in the woods. Smelling odd smells, electrostatic energy, where it would interfere with their radio or television reception. Then they'd hear the growls at night. People were finding these odd footprints. And, oh, that's cool. Nice ambiance. I like that. But the seminal event of the Bridgewater Bigfoot era was when people reported seeing a bipedal bear walk upright. And one night, while a police officer sat in his patrol car investigating one of these reports, he claimed that, quote, something picked up and violently dropped the rear of his patrol car, a bumper shaker. And he saw, out the corner of his eye, a bipedal bear run around the corner of a house. Now, that story's been told 100 different ways, but essentially that's the crux of the Bridgewater bumper shaker. One of the more famous ghosts that exists in the Bridgewater Triangle is known as a phantom hitchhiker. If you look at British folklore and ghosts, there's always descriptions of phantom hitchhikers, some in World War II garb. That are picked up by people that drive by abandoned airfields in the United Kingdom. And this guy here apparently is a well-built man between the ages of 35 and 55. Some say that he was killed changing a tire on Route 44. Others, a farmer from the area. He has red hair, a red beard, and wears a flannel shirt. And he's appeared to drivers in their back seat. Folklore would tell you that if you honk your horn 3 times and flash your headlights 3 times, that he'll appear in the seat behind the driver's side. What I found out is the police will appear and they'll pull you over if you honk your horn 3 times and flash your headlights. But it's a legend that's persisted there, and it's really grown in the last few years. Everybody trying to make $1 off the hitchhiking. But this is myself and Matt Moniz right here. There we go. At the sign, the Seekonk sign, which is on the Seekonk-Rehoboth line on Route 44, where allegedly the most sightings of this occur. And again, it's an interesting story. Go to masscrossroads.com. Christopher Balzano has the definitive story and other encounters with the red-headed hitchhiker of Route 44. Also, you hear of these large birds, and I try to tell people that this is a scavenger environment. We've seen seagulls and Canadian geese the size of P-51s. Scavenger birds are doing well in a disposable economy. There was a flap of sightings that took place in Alaska in 1999 and 2003. I had a man tell me about the size of a turkey vulture. That he said he put his wings like that and said, "Stand next to me." That's how wide the wingspan was. Well, in 1971, a police officer, Norfolk Police Sergeant Thomas Downey, was confronted by a prehistoric creature that looked like a pteranodon or a pterodactyl. He was on a stretch of road near Birds Hill in Mansfield. It's not Easton, it's on the Mansfield-Easton line. And I've been there, it's an eerie place. When something with a wingspan of at least 8 to 12 feet plopped in front of him in the middle of the street and caused him to bring his car to a stop. He said the thing flew straight up like a helicopter and flapped away. Consequently, he was nicknamed the Birdman. And to this day, he refuses to talk about this encounter. Other unusual sightings of large birds took place in 1984, where two creatures were reported seen fighting over the Hockomock Swamp. And then more recently, a woman claims that she saw one in 1992 with the wingspan of 10 to 12 feet. The other thing, and Derek knows a lot about this encounter, is the Black Dog of Abington. And there are reports of this strange phantom hellhound, which is popular in British folklore as well. If you see a black dog, something bad is about to happen to you. And even Dickens, I believe, refers to a black dog in some of his literature. But in 1976, at the apex of the Bridgewater Triangle in Abington, Massachusetts, people claimed that they saw this huge ghostly dog with red eyes. And a man said that he saw it mauling two ponies on a local farm, and one had its throat ripped out. Well, obviously, the plot took place over a span of, what, 3 weeks, Derek?
Yeah, it was something like in the spring of maybe April of 76.
Right, and it culminated with a firefighter, a police officer by the name of Frank Kern, who saw this thing along some railroad tracks and actually fired at the dog, but missed. And the dog just, unconcerned, turned away and flip-flopped off into infamy. And there hasn't been a big sighting of a phantom dog since. I'm going to be heavy on the sea monsters tonight. I figure we're a coastal community, and I find them creepy because there's really no explanation. First sea monster encounter in New England, or in America for that matter, took place in 1638, and quote, and again, this is dreadful prose, stay with me, I'll try to bring it up. They told me of a sea serpent, and this is John Jocelyn in 1638, he's saying. They told me of a sea serpent or snake that lay coiled up like a cable upon the rock at Cape Ann. A boat passing by with Englishmen on board and 2 Indians, they would have shot the serpent, but the Indians dissuaded them, saying that if he were not killed outright, they would all be in danger of their lives. So Native American legend says that don't kill it, it's bad luck. Then in Lynn in 1641, Obadiah Turner reports the following incident off of Lynn. Again, a lot of ye's here, so bear with me. Some being on ye great beach gathering of calms and seaweed, which had been cast thereon by ye mighty storm, so this is after a storm, did spy a most wonderful serpent, a short way off from ye shore. He was big round in ye thickest part as a wine pipe, and they do affirm that he was 15 fathoms, that's 90 feet or more in length. A most wonderful tale, but ye witnesses be credible, and it would be of no account to them to tell an untrue tale. We have likewise heard yet that Cape Ann's ye people have seen a monster like unto this, which did there come from out of ye land, much to ye terror of them, yet did see him. Ye. But the most famous one, and June O'Neill, J.P. O'Neill, the author, has written about this, is the Gloucester Sea Serpent. A spate of credible sightings that took place, they began in August of 1817, when 2 women claimed that they had seen the creature swimming in Gloucester Harbor. The same sea serpent was seen at almost the same time by the captain of a coasting vessel. A few days later, Mrs. Amos Story said she saw what appeared to be a tree trunk washed up on the rocks of 10-Pound Island, which lies in the harbor. As she watched it through her telescope, it moved, and when she looked again, it was gone. William Rowe, who saw it the same day as Mrs. Story, said, quote, "It was between the hours of 12 and 1 o'clock when I first saw him, and he continued in sight for an hour and a half. I was sitting on the shore and was about 20 rods from him when he was the nearest to me. His head appeared to be shaped like that of a sea turtle, and he carried his head from 10 to 12 inches above the surface of the water. His head at that distance appeared larger than the head of any dog I ever saw. From the back of his head to the next part of him that was visible, I should judge to be 3 or 4 feet. He moved very rapidly through the water, and I should say a mile or 2 at most in 3 minutes. I saw no bunches on his back. On this day, I did not see more than 10 or 12 feet of his body." So here's one of the great sea serpent sightings during this time period. And most of the reports are similar to this one. 2 days later, August 12th, Shipmaster Solomon Allen III, he says, quote, "His head formed something like that head of a rattlesnake, but nearly as large as the head of a horse. When he moved to the surface of the water, his motion was slow at times, playing in circles and sometimes moving straight forward." 2 days after that, August 14th, Matthew Gaffney, a carpenter, said, "I had a good gun and took good aim. I aimed at his head, and I think I must have hit him, because he turned towards us immediately after I had fired, and I thought he was coming right at us. but he sunk down and went directly under our boat and made his appearance at about 100 yards from where he sunk. This is the famous woodcut of the Gloucester Sea Serpent, but it's a fascinating account. It's documented by, I'd say, at least 6 dozen witnesses over a 3-year span. It's a very good story. And continuing on the theme of monsters in the sea, I'm always fascinated by phantom invasions, phantom attacks, and this is a real one where a U-boat during World War II, at the conclusion of World War II, on July 21st, 1918, surfaced in Orleans Harbor and fired the tugboat Perth Amboy and 4 other barges and set them ablaze. It happened in the middle of the day, surfaced, fired, and then submerged and headed out to sea. So I've always thought about phantom U-boat attacks of World War II. Growing up, I always heard that not only had a U-boat actually landed in New York City, where the Germans did land saboteurs, but that there were U-boats lurking off the shores of Marshfield, off the shores of Duxbury, Plymouth, Scituate, Gurnett. And these are actual stories. And one has it that, and again, it's folklore, that German sailors actually paddled in a rubber raft to Gurnett Point, reconnoitered Gurnett Point, in fact, peeked into a house out on Sagebrush Neck there, paddled back to their U-boat, and went out to sea. I have no corroboration except fourth-hand hearsay and innuendo. But I've always thought that was fascinating. And I often wondered if this great movie, The Russians Are Coming, which puts the Russians into the invading scenario, I believe it was Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket, if that emanated, because this movie was made in 1965, if that emanated from that story that circulated around Gurnett Point. Don't know. A couple of other sea serpents. Daniel Webster had a sea serpent sighting, and stay with me as I read the graphic here. This story was told on June 14, 1857. 7 a.m. to Clark's Island. B.M. Watson tells me that he learned from pretty good authority that Daniel Webster once saw the sea serpent. It seems it was first seen in the bay between Mann and Plymouth Beach by a perfectly reliable witness many years ago. The man was accustomed to look out on the sea with his glass every morning, the first thing as regularly as he ate his breakfast. Well, one morning he saw this monster with a head of somewhat like a horse's, raised some 6 feet above the water, and his body the size of a calf trailing behind. He was careering over the bay, chasing the mackerel, which ran ashore in their fright, were washed up and died in great numbers. So this creature was hungry and was chasing fish up onto the beach. The story is that Webster was to meet some Plymouth gentlemen at Nantucket and spend the day fishing with them. After the fishing, he was set out to return to Duxbury in a sailboat with Peterson, as he had come, his friend Peterson, and on the way they saw the sea serpent, which answered to the common account of this creature. It passed directly across their bows, only 6 or 7 rods off, and then disappeared. On the sail back, however, Webster, having had time to reflect on what had occurred, at length said to Peterson, quote, "For God's sake, never say a word about this to anyone. For if it ever should be known that I should have seen the sea serpent, I should hear the last of it, never hear the last of it, but wherever I went, I should have to tell the story to everyone I met." So it would have hurt his political career. So I think it's great. It's a sea serpent cover-up. High Pines Sea Monster. High Pines is an area, according to this gentleman, between Gurnett and Brant Rock. On November 23rd, 1969, Captain Albert Franklin Pierce, now 92 years old at that time, a longtime lobsterman and Grand Banks fisherman from Plymouth, told this story. He says around 1939, he was hauling lobster pots at High Pine, which is halfway from Gurnett to Brant Rock, and he was along with a companion by the name of Mr. Smith. They see a light gray serpent, quote, serpent with bends between the waves, but they couldn't see the head. Well, 3 days later, fishermen in Gloucester, and I spelled it incorrectly, also saw it. They said it was, this guy here, Franklin Pierce, said it was 60 feet long with fins 5 to 6 feet high. They watched it for about 5 minutes, 1.5 miles offshore when the thing submerged, and it left a greasy trace in the water. Another Marshfield Sea Serpent. This is July 25th, 1962. It's seen by the ship Caroline and the boat Vinci. It had the head of an alligator, 2 large fins near its tail, and the body of a nail keg. Archie Lewis says, quote, "It was gulping up the fish in the area, and it didn't concern itself with the fishermen in any way." And then the Man's Hill Beach Monster. Well, I remember as a little boy, even though I'm only 22, hearing this, on WHDH radio, that they interrupted Sports Huddle. Eddie Adelman, Jim McCarthy, and Mark Whitkin, I think it was. And my brother and I were actually listening to Sports Huddle, and they said that something had washed up on the shores of Man's Hill Beach in Scituate. Well, this is the famous photo here, and I believe that's Edward Rowe Snow, the author. And, whoops, before I go, I'll go back to that. People started flocking to the area overnight. Havilly Road was jammed on the evening of November 14th into the 15th, 1970. People were hacking off pieces of this monster. Some people said that it was over 33 feet in length in the area of 5 tons. It smelled to high heaven. They finally notified Edward Rowe Snow, the author, one of my heroes, and he came down to examine it, and he said, no question, it was a sea monster, because the stories that would emerge later would say to the contrary. And he demanded that some marine biologists get to the scene from Woods Hole to examine the carcass for themselves. Well, people looked at it, hacked off pieces of this thing, and again, these photos are courtesy of my friend David Downs, who was actually on the scene. As you can see, it's quite an enormous entity. It does look serpentine, and you can see one of these photos here. Again, look at the scaly backs, and you're going to say, that doesn't look like a shark, and that's what people are going to try to say that this thing was, but it almost looks like a classic dragon, doesn't it? Well, there's a color photo here of it. And I like this. Look at the head here. Okay, you're going to keep that with a spiky back. And, Derek, I don't know what you think, but I don't think this is a shark, a decaying shark. Well, I'll show you that's a slide. Here I am holding up an actual piece of it. These are tentacles or whiskers that were taken by Dave Downs. I'm holding the bottle here. But basically what they said is the shark decayed and it fell off the spine basically, and that's why it looks like a sea serpent. Personally, I think it's a stretch. I think it's an anomalous object. You know, decaying basking shark, yes, that's a basking shark right there. Right? And of course, it's got a large mouth. It's not your standard type of shark. And they say when it decays, the pectoral fin decayed and left you with this serpentine anomaly, or this sea serpent-like creature. Other things washed up on shores of Massachusetts beaches in Nantucket in 1966. Some sort of blob or blobster or globster, the late Martin Chorvinsky used to call them globsters, washed up on the shores of Nantucket. Most of the islanders who had lived there their entire lives had never seen such a creature. It was later identified, or they think it was identified, as whale tissue. And then my favorite, the Ness monster off of Block Island. It was June 17, 1996. And this creature was pretty long, 14 feet long with a foot-long snout. Okay? And some people said it looked like a sturgeon, which is a prehistoric type fish, which still exists today. Or, there you go, the decaying basking shark. Now that looks radically different from the one in Man Hill Beach. Anyways, this went missing. Somebody stole it and hid it out and hasn't been seen to this day. If you walk by a smelly garage in Block Island, they either have 200 cats or the Ness monster. Okay. Now, looking at UFOs or unidentified flying objects, well, let me go back just to, let me just talk about jellyfish before we leave the sea monster motif. Always been fascinating. My wife and I went, was it Labor Day weekend, there was an infestation of jellyfish on Green Harbor Beach. But Bay State jellyfish, there was a huge influx of jellyfish into Massachusetts Bay in 2006, late July and early August 2006. The largest measured East Coast jellyfish invasion struck Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Long Island in August 20th, 1978. By the 21st of August, they had reached Cape Cod, the Cape Cod Canal in Wareham. And in 1865, a giant lion's mane jellyfish was found in the Massachusetts Bay. The bell was 7.5 feet. The bell. Okay? And his tentacles measured 120 feet long and a width of 245 feet. That to me is just huge, gargantuan. Well, let's talk about some unidentified flying objects now. The Great Lightning Night, 1639 or 1638, depending upon who you speak to, because the calendar was shifted. September 3rd through September 11th, 1752, don't exist in the modern day Gregorian calendar. Pope Gregory realigned the calendar so we're aligned with holy days. But 1638 March or 1639, James Everell, who was described as a sober, discreet man, according to John Winthrop, the consummate historian and governor of New England, 1630 to 1639, that he and his companions boarded a little boat and set out for a trip on the Muddy River in Boston, which is an estuary of the Charles River, yes. and the Charles River, upriver towards the harbor. And as you know, Boston Harbor was filled in. It was a peninsula on an isthmus. It was kind of like a balloon on a stick. Anyways, they'd been moving downstream for about a mile when the night's mysterious events began. The three men were suddenly confronted with the appearance of a huge, bright light hovering in the sky. The light flamed up as it hovered and appeared to be about 3 yards square. As they watched, the light contracted into the figure of a swine and moved swift as an arrow in the direction of Charlestown. For 2 or 3 hours, the unidentified light moved back and forth in the sky between Everill's location and Charlestown. When the light finally disappeared, the men noticed to their dismay that they had somehow been carried against the tide back to the place where they had started their trip. And divers, according to Governor Winthrop, divers, other credible persons also saw the light after about the same place. So if you study ufology, the study of unidentified flying objects, and you believe close encounters of the third kind and fourth kind, where people claim that they're abducted by aliens, brought on board spaceships, and experiments are performed on them, there's a thing called missing time, where it should be only 1 o'clock in the morning. It's 3:30. They can't account for periods in their time. And this is like one of the earliest accounts of missing time. One of the things associated, and it doesn't happen as much as it used to happen, with UFO sightings are that they leave some sort of substance behind known as star jelly or powder sere. And it's a compound purportedly deposited on the Earth during meteor showers as well as UFO sightings. It's described as foul-smelling, gelatinous in substance, and it tends to evaporate shortly after it falls. It's cobweb-like filaments, and they're called angel hair. Well, this happened in Lowell in October 26, 1846. And reports have come in from all around the globe, the United States, New Zealand, Australia, etc. In 1909 and 1908, there was an airship flap that took place over eastern United States. An inventor by the name of Wallace Tillinghast, he was working on aeroforms and aeronautical platforms, balloons, and single-engine aircraft with lower wings. And he was a wealthy man, an eccentric man. Well, he began to take credit for all these sightings of the strange object with bright lights that was being seen throughout the Christmas season of 1909. And in fact, this particular, the particular time where it was seen by thousands of people all over Massachusetts, it was on Christmas Eve. And it happened between 6 o'clock in the evening until midnight. Its flashlights were trailed from Marlborough to Fitchburg, back through Worcester, thence to Boston, via Natick, Wellesley, Newton, and Needham. From Boston, the light passed to the northeast, circling over Chelsea and Revere, through Lynn, through the Salem line, then returning as far as Framingham, where it mysteriously disappeared from the eager searchings of newspapermen. Now, this guy Tillinghast was seen during that time period riding in the wagon, so he wasn't flying this vehicle. But it was, they estimate that 10,000 people had seen it. And some said it closely resembled that of a monoplane that was being flown by the French aviator Blériot. Others say it was more balloon and conical in shape, and still others said it was ovoidal or discoidal in shape, your classic flying saucer. But it's a fantastic story. It was seen across Massachusetts, and Willimantic, Connecticut, late in December of 1909, also had a mysterious airship sighting. One of the most famous, let me get this one. You know, when I see this on December 8th, this newspaper, December 9th actually, 1941, the headline, New York found enemy planes alarm entire Northeast. What? This is a day after Pearl Harbor. This is the December 9th paper, December 8th, 1941, this incident happened. And this line here says, enemy planes were approaching Long Island from New England and then from off the Virginia coast. What? The Germans didn't have an aircraft carrier operating in the Atlantic Theater that close to the United States. They had one called the Graf von Zeppelin. It was not even operational. The America bomber, which was a long-range bomber, one of the vengeance weapons proposed by Germany, was on the drawing board. It wasn't even conceived at this point. So if this bothers me, though, when enemy planes are seen approaching from Long Island and from New England and off the Virginia coast. Well, New York City short-circuit seriously. At 1 o'clock, Lieutenant Fitzhugh Carrier of the Army Air Defense Command reported that 10 unidentified planes were within an hour of New York, and the warnings reached a crescendo and was bright until a bombing was expected any minute. Lieutenant Carrier asked whether this might not be a test of their air warning system. He replied, "No, this is not a test. It looks," and the second page is missing, lost in posterity. Some other things, there was no air raid system, so it was up to the police to run around and alert people, but as a precautionary measure, school children were sent home, and on Wall Street, a wave of selling took place where the exchanges bought security quotations down hundreds of millions of dollars in the worst slump of the stock market since the collapse of France. Now, what's it got to do with Massachusetts? Well, the alarm spread to Boston, where police had shifted heavy stores of guns and ammunition from storage vaults to stations throughout the city, and where industrial establishments were advised to prepare for an air raid. And then this is the most famous UFO, arguably the most famous UFO photo ever to come out of Massachusetts. 1952, at Salem, U.S. Coast Guard photographer Shel R. Albert shot this picture roughly at 9:35 a.m. on July 16, 1952. He was in the photo lab working on a camera when he noticed several brilliant lights coming towards him. He watched for a few seconds, then called for another Coast Guardsman, Thomas E. Flaherty, in a nearby sick bay to come and confirm what he was seeing. The light seemed dim, and then they got much brighter. He snapped a picture. Skeptics will say that's the reflection off the window. And do you think a Coast Guard photographer would actually try to submit something that it was a reflection off a window? He would know that, but it's a very famous photograph of Salem Wharves. One of my favorite UFO sightings. How am I doing on time, Chris?
Like 5 and under, 5 minutes and under.
Okay.
5 minutes top.
5 minutes top. So I want to go through
Scroll
the UFO.
some of your favorites.
Yep. I'm going to go to Inspector Leaguer's 1692 ghosts that were seen at a house in the North Shore. The Lady in Black, my brother's going to be doing a speech on that called The Lady in Black at the New England History Festival. Basically, a woman in black attire is seen in Boston Harbor. Civil War soldier seen in the book Berkshire's Old Coot. I want to get to the Dover Demon quickly while we have time. I think I'll close on this. Basically, this happened during April of 1977, April 21st, 1977. 17-year-old Bill Bartlett's driving with a couple of friends. They're drinking beers. In fact, they were partaking in marijuana. They're traveling north on Farm Street when Bill notices what appears to be an animal climbing over a stone wall. He's an artist, a modern-day artist today. He has not recanted this story. He sees this creature that, with a reflection of headlights in his eyes. I have heard him describe it as orange eyes, green eyes. Anyways, the creature looks back at him as he drives by. He tells his friends convince him to turn around. They can't find the thing. Meanwhile, 2 hours later, about 12:30 a.m., John Baxter, age 15, is walking down the street. There's another mark in the camera. Several different paintings, though. Well, Baxter, this kid here is walking down the street, and he thinks it's one of his friends, named MG with a big head. Now, I had a friend we used to call 10 Pass because his head listed to the left. But they called this guy MG, whatever his name was, Bouchard, I've heard his last name, that he thought he had a big head. He yells out to him. The thing crosses the road, goes into a gully, and clings to a tree. And this is the drawing that John Baxter drew of the same creature that he said, and it's remarkably similar to the Bill Bartlett sighting. And then later, as Will Tainter, age 18, is driving his 15-year-old girlfriend, Abby Brabham, home to her home in Sherburne, on Springdale Ave, they saw something crouched to the left-hand side of the road on the edge of a bridge, and she said it looked as if it looked like an ape. And then I looked at the head, and the head was very big, and it was just a very weird head, she said. And, this is where that sighting took place, and that's what she said she drew. So with green eyes, whereas the other guy said it was orange eyes. There was an outbreak of phantom clown sightings in 1981, beginning in Brookline and moving west to Pennsylvania and into Missouri. Children were reported that men in clown suits were trying to lure them into the van. Fascinating story, very scary. 1989, Berkshire Bigfoot. This is a man that I talked to who claims that he saw a Bigfoot in the Berkshires on top of October Mountain. He claimed that he was downwind of the creature so it couldn't smell him, and he saw it beating him to the ground, this ape-like creature with something in its hand. And then when the wind changed, he said it got wind of him and looked right at him. He ran down the mountain. I'm at the end here, Chris. Just some sightings of phantom pumas. I'm fascinated by Truro had sightings not only in 1981 but also in November of 2007. It's been called the Pampas puma, the beast of Truro, or the Chequassett cougar. There's been cougar sightings in Beverly in 2003 and also in Acton in 2004. And wolves have been seen, and wolf attacks have taken place. Newbury, 1704. A wolf escaped from a train at South Station, causing havoc in 1913. Fascinating story. And then the Shelburne wolf, this gigantic wolf that wildlife officials insist has gone extinct, was shot and killed in 2007. Again, Hibernian Hall, November 14th, the History Festival, and I do have a special sale price for my CD, Bridgewater Triangle, if you want to buy it, $5. It's a great one. Thank you very much.